a dark phase of human history where humans could not even survive beyond the age of 12. An era where being human was literally a curse. If you managed to stay alive until just your 13th birthday, then you had lived a long life. That life belonged not to someone else, but to a special ancestor of yours and mine, who endured and won through that era. And as a result, we are here today. Imagine waking up in a world where every single day could be your last. There are no homes, no hospitals, no police, no fire, no farms. Every sound in the distance could mean a predator is hunting you, and every meal could become your final mistake. Growing old isn't something people expect. It's something almost nobody experiences. In fact, if you somehow celebrated your 13th birthday, you would already be considered one of the lucky ones. It sounds impossible today, but for some of our earliest ancestors, this wasn't a nightmare. It was everyday life. Long before cities, before civilizations, before humans ruled the planet, survival itself was the greatest challenge imaginable. The earth wasn't built for us. Every forest, every river, and every open plain was controlled by creatures far stronger, faster, and deadlier than anything we face today. Humanity stood at the very bottom of the food chain. And yet, somehow, against impossible odds, we survived. That raises an incredible question. If our ancestors were so weak, how are we still here today? The answer begins nearly 2 million years ago in East Africa, where one unexpected discovery changed everything scientists thought they knew about the earliest humans. In 1960, a team of researchers excavating the ancient landscape of Olduvai Gorge uncovered something extraordinary buried beneath layers of rock that had remained untouched for almost 2 million years. At first, it looked like nothing more than a broken jaw sticking out of the ground. But as excavation continued, more bones slowly emerged. A skull, pieces of a hand, fingers, and fragments of a body that had vanished from the earth long before recorded history began. This wasn't just another fossil. It belonged to one of the earliest members of the human family. Scientists would eventually name this species Homo habilis, meaning handy human, because the structure of its hands suggested it could grip objects with surprising precision. Unlike apes, its thumb could press against its fingers, giving it the ability to manipulate stones and shape primitive tools. It wasn't fully human, but it wasn't simply an ape anymore either. It represented one of the first major steps toward the people we are today. The discovery immediately raised dozens of questions. How old was this individual? What kind of life did it live? And perhaps the biggest mystery of all, how did it die? Modern technology gave researchers a way to travel back through time. By analyzing volcanic minerals surrounding the bones, scientists estimated that this individual had lived roughly 1.8 million years ago. The teeth weren't fully developed. The wisdom teeth had never erupted. Growth plates inside the wrist bones hadn't completely fused. Every clue pointed toward the same conclusion. This wasn't an adult. It was a child. Researchers estimated the individual had died somewhere around 11 or 12 years old. Over the following decades, researchers uncovered more Homo habilis fossils from different locations, yet the pattern remained the same. Most had died between the ages of 10 and 14. Scientists later analyzed more than 100 fossil teeth using microscopic patterns and enamel analysis. The conclusion was astonishing. The average age at death was just over 12 years. Imagine a society where most children never became adults, where grandparents were almost unheard of. What kind of world could create such terrifying statistics? By now, one thing was undeniable. Dying young wasn't an accident. It was the normal course of life. But numbers alone couldn't explain why. To uncover the answer, scientists had to reconstruct the world Homo habilis lived in. It wasn't a peaceful landscape filled with forests and rivers. It was a brutal testing ground where every sunrise brought a new fight for survival. Nearly 2 million years ago, East Africa looked nothing like it does today. Dense forests were shrinking as the climate became cooler and drier. Vast grasslands spread across the continent, leaving fewer trees to hide in and forcing countless species into the open. For Homo habilis, this change was catastrophic. They were no longer protected by thick forests, yet they weren't fully adapted to life on the ground either. Homo habilis stood only about 4 feet tall. Their brains were larger than earlier ancestors, giving them a small advantage in problem-solving and tool use, but their bodies paid the price. They were small, physically weak, and nowhere near as fast as the predators surrounding them. Every step onto the open savanna meant exposing themselves to animals that could outrun, overpower, and outfight them in seconds. Their feet also reveal an important clue. Unlike modern humans, Homo habilis lacked the efficient arch that allows us to run long distances. They could move, but not for very long, and certainly not fast enough to escape an ambush. Imagine seeing danger hundreds of feet away and knowing your body simply couldn't outrun it. That was the reality they faced almost every day. Yet despite these overwhelming disadvantages, Homo habilis refused to disappear. They adapted in the only ways they could, by thinking, cooperating, and making the earliest stone tools. Those simple decisions would eventually change the future of humanity, but before they could become the dominant species on Earth, they first had to survive one of the deadliest environments any human ancestor had ever faced. Even the trees offered little safety. Homo habilis still carried features that helped with climbing, but they weren't built like earlier apes. Their fingers were less curved, their shoulders were changing, and their bodies were caught between two worlds. They were no longer perfect climbers, yet they were far from becoming efficient runners. Evolution had placed them in an uncomfortable transition that left them with a dangerous problem. Staying on the ground exposed them to predators, but climbing into the trees didn't guarantee survival either. Food was becoming scarce, and every fruit tree attracted fierce competition from animals that had spent millions of years mastering life above the ground. Homo habilis simply couldn't compete with specialists in either environment. So they turned to another strategy, scavenging. Instead of hunting massive animals themselves, they searched for the remains left behind by stronger predators. After lions or saber-toothed cats finished feeding, small groups of Homo habilis rushed in, hoping to cut away whatever meat remained before another scavenger arrived. It was risky, but it provided calories their growing brains desperately needed. This simple behavior may have changed human history forever. Scavenging demanded teamwork. One individual watched for danger, while another broke bones with crude stone tools to reach the nutritious marrow inside. Others gathered food and kept an eye on approaching predators. Cooperation wasn't just helpful, it became essential for survival. But every successful meal came with terrifying consequences. Giant hyenas, enormous saber-toothed cats, ancient leopards, and crocodiles all competed for the same carcasses. At any moment, a hungry predator could return and reclaim its meal. For Homo habilis, every bite of food had to be earned under the constant threat of becoming the next victim. Survival wasn't measured in years, it was measured one day at a time. Predators weren't just everywhere, they were bigger and more specialized than the ones we know today. Massive hyenas crushed bones with terrifying jaws, saber-toothed cats ambushed from the shadows, giant crocodiles waited silently beneath the water, and powerful eagles could snatch young primates from above. Homo habilis was surrounded from every direction. Fossil evidence tells an unsettling story. Scientists have found ancient human bones bearing tooth marks that match large cats, punctures consistent with crocodile attacks, and injuries that suggest deadly encounters were common. These weren't rare events. They were part of everyday life for early humans trying to survive another sunrise. Yet something remarkable was happening beneath the surface. Every challenge pushed Homo habilis to become smarter. Simple stone tools became more refined. Groups learned to communicate better, divide tasks, and watch each other's backs. Intelligence was beginning to replace brute strength as humanity's greatest survival tool. Nature wasn't trying to help them. If anything, it seemed determined to eliminate them. But extreme pressure often creates extraordinary change. The individuals that learned faster, cooperated better, and adapted more quickly were the ones most likely to survive long enough to have children. Generation after generation, those tiny advantages slowly reshaped the future of our species. Without realizing it, Homo habilis was laying the foundation for everything that came later. They were still weak, still vulnerable, and still dying young, but they had started a chain of evolution that would eventually produce a species capable of mastering fire, crossing continents, and changing the planet forever. As millions of years passed, survival itself became the engine of evolution. Every generation faced the same brutal question: who could adapt before nature struck again? Those who learned to cooperate, solve problems, and use simple tools gained a small but life-saving advantage. It wasn't enough to eliminate danger, but it was enough to keep the human story alive. Scientists believe that from this relentless pressure, a new human ancestor gradually emerged. Compared with Homo habilis, Homo erectus was taller, stronger, and far better suited for life on the open plains. Their longer legs made running more efficient. Their brains continued to grow, and their stone tools became increasingly sophisticated. They represented a dramatic leap forward in human survival. Homo erectus eventually accomplished something no earlier human had done. They expanded beyond Africa, explored unfamiliar environments, and mastered the use of fire. What began as a fragile lineage struggling to survive childhood slowly transformed into one capable of reshaping entire ecosystems. But none of those achievements erase the importance of Homo habilis. They lived through one of the harshest chapters in human history. They endured constant hunger, relentless predators, and an environment that seemed determined to erase them. Even though most never lived past 12, their struggle became the foundation upon which every later generation was built. The next chapter reveals how those tiny improvements eventually turned humanity from prey into the planet's most successful survivor, a transformation that changed the fate of every person alive. Today, the story of Homo habilis isn't really about extinction. It's about survival against impossible odds. Every generation that managed to stay alive long enough to raise children passed along tiny improvements, slightly better coordination, sharper awareness, stronger social bonds, and a growing ability to solve problems. Those small advantages slowly became humanity's greatest. So, why did early humans rarely live past 12? Because they existed at the crossroads of climate change, relentless predators, limited food, physical disadvantages, and the earliest stages of human evolution. They weren't built to dominate the world yet. They were simply trying to survive it. The greatest lesson from Homo habilis is that progress rarely happens in comfort. It is often born from struggle, failure, and persistence. Those early survivors paid an extraordinary price, and because of them, humanity was given another chance. In the end, the mystery wasn't solved by a single fossil. It took decades of discoveries, careful research, and countless clues hidden inside ancient bones and teeth to reconstruct the lives of our earliest ancestors. Homo habilis existed during one of the toughest periods in human evolution. Their bodies were still changing, their brains were growing, and every day demanded constant adaptation. Nature rewarded only those who could survive long enough to pass their traits to the next generation. Over millions of years, those tiny improvements accumulated. Better cooperation, improved communication, more effective tools, and larger brains slowly transformed vulnerable ancestors into increasingly capable humans. Evolution wasn't fast. It was a marathon measured across thousands of generations. The reason early humans rarely lived past 12 wasn't a single predator or one devastating disease. It was the combined force of climate change, limited food, dangerous landscapes, fierce competition, and relentless predators. Every challenge pushed human evolution forward. Now help us uncover the next forgotten story by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next journey through history.